In the US, Harvard University is to challenge an order by the Trump administration that bans it from enrolling foreign students. The Ivy League institution says the order is illegal. More than a quarter of Harvard students are from overseas. Many are shocked and now face an uncertain future.
The future of thousands of students at stake at one of the most prestigious universities in the world. More than 6,000 students enrolled at Harvard could now lose their spots after the Department of Homeland Security informed the university that it's not only barred from accepting new students from overseas, but that current international students on certain visa types would also have to transfer to another university or risk losing their legal status in the U.S.
Ever since I was a kid, Harvard has represented, the sort of like the epitome of higher education globally. So basically, it's a mixture of like shock, then to kind of just devastation, like frustration, and then uncertainty, anxiety. It's a combination of all of those feelings, I would say, among students in the community right now.
Trump is furious at the university for rejecting his demand to grant the administration oversight on admissions and hiring. He has accused Harvard of being a hotbed of anti-Semitism and, quote, woke liberal ideology. His administration already froze billions of dollars in future research grants and other aid to the Ivy League institution. The Trump administration has also been cracking down on international students elsewhere, revoking visas for a range of given reasons, from their involvement in pro-Palestinian activism to minor traffic violations. Last month, China, which has the highest number of international students in the U.S., issued a warning advising students to closely monitor political developments if they're considering studying in the States. Now, China is accusing the U.S. of politicizing educational exchange. The U.S.-China educational cooperation is mutually beneficial. China has consistently opposed politicizing education. This will only harm the U.S.'s image and international standing. Critics warn the implications can go far beyond Harvard's gates, that the U.S. may be shutting the doors that made it the top destination for the world's brightest minds.
Now let's bring in Cornelia Woll. She is the president of the Hertie School, Berlin, and a professor of international political economy. Now, the Homeland Security Secretary says this action being taken because Harvard has failed to adhere to the law. Harvard has in turn called the order unlawful. What's your take?
Well, I think this is quite clearly just the latest of a long list of attacks with one single objective, and that is to bring Harvard University to its knees. The fig leaf of the protection of Jewish students or the fight against the liberal and woke ideology are the items that are cited. But what you can clearly see is that all of the measures the Trump government has put into place really target the resources the university has in order to continue its operations. So we first saw a freezing of public funds, completely independent of any of the content that it was used for. We saw a fight over the tax benefits for the endowment and for the property that Harvard owns. And now it's an attack on the tuition revenue that Harvard can have from its student body and from enrollment of a fourth of students that come from overseas. So it is an attack on the economic resources of an institution that will not bow down to the list of demands that the US administration expects it to follow.
And now, how do you expect this to affect the American scientific landscape?
The attack on Harvard and on all other universities is a real blow to the scientific landscape that the United States have built, and that has been the epitome of what scientists aspire to. Because, of course, Harvard might be able to resist, might be able to be successful in the legal responses it is currently doing, but the anxiety that students feel and that researchers feel is going to last as long as this government is in place and as long as it is clear clear that government really can intervene with much force in the free science that is supposed to be produced in these universities. So it creates a context of uncertainty that leads to international student mobility going into other directions, and it will lead also to researchers thinking differently about where they want to apply when they are looking for a job or where they want to do their research projects. I do not know to what end that will distribute flows in the world, but I do know that it is a big blow to the US's scientific landscape.
Talking about these flows of researchers in the world, many have said this could be the start of a brain drain in the US, and you and other researchers have suggested that affected researchers could be offered a fresh start in Germany. What would that look like, briefly, if you can?
So I think it is very important to signal to everybody, including the Trump administration, that research holds enormous societal value, economic value. It is really an asset, and it's an asset that this government is willing to destroy. And if that is true, then it's important that there is competition over these assets and that countries everywhere signal that they understand the value of research and scientific insights, and that they're willing to host the researchers in these projects that can no longer do their research, and also possibly some of the infrastructure, the data, etc., so that it doesn't get lost. So I think, yes, there could be a brain drain simply because researchers are mobile, students are mobile, and it is clear that the research environment in the US that used to be of the highest standard is getting less attractive. But I think it is important also to understand that being a host to these researchers as a country, as a region, there's a European program called Choose Europe for Science, means that we can allow the global scientific advances to continue, because we can host some of the projects, we can allow them to be interconnected across borders, and we would all hope that this will eventually also mean that the US can be part of these networks, and sometimes scientists may want to return, possibly after a period of uncertainty.
Cornelia Woll, there, president of the Hertie School in Berlin. Thank you very much.
Well, Cathryn Clüver Ashbrook is a senior advisor with the Bertelsmann Stiftung. That's an independent foundation here in Germany promoting reform processes for a future-oriented society. She's an expert on transatlantic relations, and her master's degree in public administration was awarded by the Harvard Kennedy School, where she later spent 11 years as executive director. Welcome to DW. This is shaping up to be quite the confrontation. How far do you expect this to go now that the judges are involved and backing Harvard?
Well, I still expect this to go further because we know this Trump administration will not rest. Harvard is the center of its cultural war on universities, on the history of the United States. We see a similar game played with other cultural institutions, including major museums, major cultural icons in the United States. But Harvard really is the pinnacle because it, as one of the first universities, stepped forward to halt the Trump administration's ambitions. Their requests to be able to weigh in on things like faculty promotions. This latest effort, the request was to not only know who all the international students are, but to know all of their individual coursework, to effectively overstep privacy lines in confrontation with America's oldest private university. And I am not surprised how quickly the judges have moved to halt this idea coming from the Department of Homeland Security. But the Trump administration is certainly plotting on how to continue its attack on the nation's oldest educational institution.
So, as I understand it, something like 27% of Harvard students are from overseas. How far will the effects of this ban be felt if the government actually wins this confrontation?
Well, it's certainly a dramatic move. Not only would that take away from the intellectual richness of the university, with students effectively being turned away, their offers being rescinded if this were to come through, but you alluded to it. There are graduate schools at the Harvard Kennedy School whose business model it is to truly also train the world's next leaders, the world's public policy leaders, like the Harvard Kennedy School. 56% of its students is now now international students. In the college, at Harvard College, a lot of the international students are full tuition paying students. So it's also an attack on the business model of this type of American higher education. But of course, a lack of intellectual richness would be the immediate consequence of Harvard students, international students being asked to transfer to other universities if this idea from the Department of Homeland Security would in fact be enforced. I know that Harvard will battle tooth and nail. We as Harvard alumni have just heard from Harvard's president, Alan Garber, that is the intention of the university. But I guarantee you it will be extremely disruptive for students, parents making plans beyond graduation, but also ready to send their students, in some cases across the Atlantic or Pacific, as we head into the fall semester. This might not be fully clarified by the time international students want to head back to campus in late August.
OK, so your view is there, clearly passionately and sincerely held, but not universally shared. We've seen institutions like Columbia give in to this.
Well, it's every private institution's prerogative to respond to administrative pressures in the way that they see fit. You also see that in general, since the Columbia decision, a large consortium or set of consortia have come up among leading universities, not only, by the way, the Ivy League universities, but the so-called Big Ten schools have also banded together, and other universities in suing the administration on a number of other things, including the funding of research funds. All the universities have made their case what the vital role is that they play for the innovative capacity, the public health capacity of American public life, but beyond that, global public life, frankly, particularly when it comes to things like combating infectious diseases, finding cures for cancer, for ALS, and those kind of things. So I think Harvard spearheaded it, but you see many universities falling in line behind Harvard University.
Thank you for talking us through that so clearly. Cathryn Clüver from the Bertelsmann Stiftung. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Let's get more on this from our correspondent, Benjamin Alvarez Gruber, who is at the Harvard University campus in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Welcome, Ben. Bring us up to date then on this escalating confrontation.
So these have been tensions that have been growing for weeks now. The latest is that a federal judge here in Boston granted what the University of Harvard says was illegal by the U.S. government. So they stopped this bid by the Trump administration to revoke the ability of Harvard University to enroll international students. This was, of course, expected by people here at the university, so we can expect that this will continue also as the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem accuses the university of what they say is fostering anti-Semitism. The big question is if the University of Harvard will back down and what that would actually mean also for other universities who have seen similar pressure from the Trump administration. What the Trump administration wanted to see within 72 hours that they gave the university are videos and are pictures of students taking part in protests here. So it's also quite hard to talk to them, as many are afraid that there might be retaliation if they speak out about this publicly.
Someone somewhere in the White House must have a big chart listing all the court cases against the Trump administration at the moment. How are they likely to respond to this latest judicial intervention?
So we can expect this to continue. This is a back and forth. If we look at the homepage of the university, also the recent statements, there have been threats against cutting funding, presidential threats also by President Trump himself. Then this longer statement by Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security. So we can expect this back and forth to continue. But regardless of the outcome, there is fear talking to those here at the university, not just by the international students, for the international body that, as you said, comprises 27% of the students here, but actually it would also mean for the academic excellence for the university itself and for the US as a country that many from around the world want to come here to study. So next week there will be the commencement, so the graduation. We already saw the stage being prepared for next week, and the big question remains what will happen next year with these international students, as the Trump administration is currently giving them two options. applications to transfer to other universities, leaving it open how that would work, or leave the country as they are studying with visas that are tied to the university. So if they cannot study in the US, that would mean that the visas would also be revoked. We've seen that some universities are already trying to get them. For example, just to give you one example, a university in Hong Kong that said we have our arms wide open to accept those students from Harvard University. But what we can see here on the ground is that there are still many question marks what they would mean, and that regardless of the outcome, this is a very difficult situation, not just for those who came to the United States from abroad to study here at the United States' oldest and wealthiest university.
All right, then. Ben, we'll leave it there. Benjamin Alvarez Gruber on the Harvard University campus in the United States. Thank you.